Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I am here with a tutorial to help you use 12 by 12 pattern paper. This is an incredibly simple tutorial and an incredibly simple way of using 12 by 12 pattern paper, but with it you can make 12 cards with 3 sheets of pattern paper and 0 scraps. So if you're looking to use a lot of pattern paper quickly, I think this will work for you. But again, it is an incredibly simple design, so I understand that it's not for everyone and you probably wouldn't want to be making, hundreds of it. But if you need to make some quick cards, or if simple cards are for you, this will work. A lot of people ask for how to use 12 by 12 pattern paper. They say they have a lot and they want to go through it quickly. I will say my one sheet wonders, because they are designed for 6 by 6 paper, will also work with your 12 by 12. You just have to cut them down to 6 by 6 and then work with the measurements. This design incorporates 3 by 4 cut aparts. However, you would not need the cut aparts. You could just take a 12 by 12 paper and cut it to the 3 by 4 sizes. You're probably just going to have to add something to it. Die cut images, pre-printed images, images that you colored and stamped, sentiments, etc. You're not going to see too much of that in the video today just because I do have the cut aparts, but I think that this would be pretty adaptable to that as well. In the printable, it will show you how to cut the pattern paper that isn't the 3 by 4 cut aparts, because I figure you kind of know just to cut those apart, and if you don't have the cut aparts, again, just everything's to that 3 by 4 size. So I didn't add that, but I show you how to cut this paper, and what I am doing here is I'm cutting 6 pieces of 4 by 5 1/4, and then 6 strips at 4 3/4, and that's going to create my really simple design. Now, I did include a portrait and a landscape sketch. I'm only going to be doing portrait today because all of my cut aparts were portrait cards. The paper I'm using today is from Opaque. I got it in a warehouse sale box. I'll link it if it's still available, but I know a lot of the people who are asking me for these videos are wanting to use their stash. So with that in mind, I'm going to work on sort of this mass production line I have going here, where I take all these previously cut 3 by 4 pieces of pattern paper and I'm going to adhere them onto these 3 1/4 by 4 1/4 pieces of craft cardstock that I've cut. And you actually don't get a lot of scraps when you cut these 3 1/4 by 4 1/4 from the cardstock, which is nice. And I'm going to show you a little thing you can do with scraps of cardstock. I also am taking all my 4 3/4 pieces and gluing them to 4 1/4 by 1 inch pieces of craft cardstock. And this is going to allow it to, these two parts have a mat. However, the 4 by 5 1/4 piece doesn't have a mat. Instead, I'm just going to glue it to a card, an A2 size card that is craft. And that way it will allow it to look like it kind of has a mat and everything will look really unified, but it doesn't, and that helps to use the pattern paper a bit more efficiently. If I cut it smaller and put a mat on it and then put on white cardstock, for instance, I would be left with scraps. So I find this to be the most adaptable way. You also can work with a landscape design and use that 4 by 3 1/4 strip. You're just going to have to cut it in half, and you're going to hide the gap behind the 3 by 4 cut apart. If you look at the sketch, hopefully it makes sense how to use it, but I also do find that most cut aparts are in this vertical format, so that is why I focused on that design. Here I'm separating which ones have to be Easter and which ones I think I could adapt to just be springtime, because when I donate my cards, a lot of the organizations, some of them want non-holiday cards because they get a lot of holiday cards. So if they can, if some people could make non-holiday cards or more general season type cards like a spring card, it works a little bit better for them. So that's my reasoning there for trying really hard to make some not Easter, even though I'm using Easter paper. I also feel like people don't send a lot of Easter cards, not a super popular card making holiday, at least in my experience. So I wanted to show you that you could use Easter paper outside of that specific holiday. However, because I tried to choose papers that were generally not Easter specific. I have these polka dots, these flowers, and then like the tulip, which is another type of flower, of course. So there's two different flower images, but one of the sides of the pattern paper did have some Easter images, so I am using those with the Easter cut-aparts, and I am sort of planning ahead as much as possible. If I had just started gluing down backgrounds and strips and then the cut-aparts on top, and I didn't really think ahead, I might get to the point where I don't like the way the patterns mix. So if I stop and kind of plan them out a little bit, I can say, oh, this one's going to have, this cut apart's going to have florals on it, so I want to put it with the floral background paper. Or this cut apart has to, it says Happy Easter, so I'll pair it up with the Easter paper so that I'm not stuck with things that don't coordinate as well. However, the big advantage of using a collection of pattern paper all together is everything is going to match. It may not have been your first choice, but it's still going to look good. Here I'm taking a pile, they're off to the left, of scrap cardstock, and I'm using it to smooth out the design. So since I'm going to glue this cut apart or journaling card on top of this other strip, it would look a little bit lumpy bumpy, and this smooths it out. So instead of resting flat on that pattern paper, it's going to rest on this cardstock, which is more even in terms of its like level as the strip. And so it just makes everything just a little bit more smoothed out. And when you're making really simple cards, making sure everything is really well put together helps a lot. Okay, so here I'm separating the ones that I think can just kind of be done from the ones that need some help. For instance, there's one that says Easter Bunny, but I want to make that a non-Easter card, so I'm putting it aside, and I'm going to cover the Easter Bunny words with a sentiment strip here. Here is a negative die cut of my favorite sentiment strips, and I keep all of those sentiment strips dies on a magnetic holder from Twiddler's Nook, and it sits right on my desk so that I don't have to go into my die stash and find my sentiment strips all the time. I just have them right at hand because I use them so much, and I keep this negative with painter's tape. That yellow stuff you see poking through is painter's tape, and I keep this handy so that whenever I want to stamp a sentiment, I can just hold it down and line things up in my MISTI. I find that it's really hard to stamp on a sentiment strip that's already cut out unless it's being held down, and the MISTI magnets are going to get in the way. You're not going to be able to hold it down, or and I prefer to use a stamping tool. Of course, you don't have to, but even still, even if you were just stamping this straight with a stamp block, having it held down like this can be super helpful. And I, again, just suggest taking your very favorite sentiment strips and keeping them out and separate and creating that negative die cut space for them so that you can kind of just constantly pull that template out without having to sort of fuss with it too much. Here, I'm going to use my fake foam tape to pop up my sentiments. It's another way I use scrap cardstock. I take 2 pieces of thick scrap cardstock because all the cardstock I use is the thick 110-pound stuff, usually from Michael's Recollections. Sometimes I use other stuff. And I take my scraps, I glue them together and make them double wide, and I glue that on the back instead of using foam tape. It makes things more recyclable, and it's free. Then I'm going to place these sentiments that I picked out. I just stamped 3 of this one that says blessings today and always, and 3 of the one that says you make me smile from ear to ear, because I thought that would pair well with some of the Easter images. These are from an MFT and Stacy Yakula Easter set, which again, I will try to link, but this to me is more about using your stash. I just picked 2 sentiments that were spring-ish and I thought could go well. Now, this particular one here, the carrot that said notes at the top, it needs something else to finish it off. So this is the only time I'm going to add a colored image in. This is the same stamp set that I pulled my sentiments from. It, again, is an Easter set, but not all of them are super Eastery. Like, particularly this bunny doesn't have like a Easter basket or anything like that with him. So I'm going to let it be more of a just general spring card, and I colored it up with my Copics. And this is what I would do if I didn't have journaling cards. Last thing I want to share with you. I mentioned that I like to donate my cards. And one way to make that easier, because a lot of places ask you to write a message inside your cards. I know that can be intimidating. Like, what do you say? And some of these organizations serve children. Some of them serve seniors. I think this pretty much works for everyone, but up to you. I try to make sure all my jokes are age appropriate for everyone. And if you can get these jokes and a whole bunch others. You can get specifically Easter jokes and every holiday you can think of and all kinds of themes. These are going to be spring themes, but you can go to my blog, and it's linked in the video description, pick up your free template, but also pick up these free printable jokes. And so it'll have a little message, it'll have the joke, and then sort of like this one says Happy Spring, but they might say, Happy Easter if they're Easter jokes, or I have like, mermaid themed jokes and pirate themed jokes and just all kinds, so that it can match up with whatever you're trying to create. And what I will do is glue these inside of the cards and then sign my name and where I'm from, because that is generally the request for where I donate. You can also find a bunch of places to donate over on my blog. It's the Card Drive resources page. So I hope this was helpful. This gives you some idea to use your 12 by 12 cards. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I will leave you links to the products I used, as well as my social media in the video description, so you can follow along for some extra inspiration over on Instagram. And here's some videos for you to check out if you like. Have an awesome day. Bye.